Hello.
Hello.
Sorry, I was just typing up here.
So who's Safari Monkey?
I don't know.
Can you please identify yourself?
Hi, Safari Monkey. Cool name, but
We don't
who
know
Yeah.
are you?
Hi, sorry for joining a bit too early earlier.
Don't worry.
I was recommended this by a friend of mine to join. I work in the XR industry.
Oh,
I was not aware of an expectation to be using my legal name, but I can if that's necessary.
you're not, but we just don't know you. Did you come in as Druid earlier?
No, I'm a friend of Druids.
Okay, all
Okay.
right, that's fine. We're happy to have you here. We're just careful because of, Zoom bombing.
Trolls, yeah, I'm aware.
You
We,
know how that
we've had a
works.
few very strange Zoom bombings, which clearly you are not, so yes.
Yeah.
You're welcome, of course.
Hey, and I'm still here.
Yeah, we can kick you out after all that stuff you did, Tom. You're lucky. You're lucky.
Did you figure out that I wasn't trying to appropriate Roy Ascott's work?
Yeah, and I also went back through, and I have all those books, and it's actually
Yeah.
page 259, not 260.
Oh, well, the one I have, I thought, well, okay, maybe I got it wrong, but whatever.
Is it this one you're using?
Yeah, I thought so.
Yes, page 259. You have to
Okay.
be careful with this publisher because what they do is they put two pages side by side with and it's the first page. It's weird.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
You see?
Yep. I see what you said, what you
Yeah,
mean.
I love this
Okay.
prep. It's not easy.
That's weird. All
I
right.
know, I know, I know. But Illinois is one of my, when I was studying with Roy, that was his big topic.
Yeah.
So when I saw that quote, I was like, I know that quote. And I also know Eddie really well.
Hmm.
When this book came out, it was really great because he did what we wanted, and that was collect all of Roy's stuff in one book, right?
Right.
And it's funny because it just says Roy Escott and it says edited with an essay by Eddie. Eddie did so much labor on this, it's unbelievable. And the introduction is what 100 plus pages long. So it's not like an essay. The big part of the book is Eddie's, evaluation of Roy's work over Roy's
Hmm.
lifetime.
Yeah. Well, I
So
mean, I hope we can fix those formatting issues.
yeah, we
Yeah,
did we started it.
yeah,
Okay.
Tom, that's entirely my fault because you provided me with this weird other thing, word or something, where you had done it correctly. I put it in author,
Yeah.
and author has its own idiosyncratic way of doing it, which
Well, I
had
thought I'd fix that when I did an author version, and so I thought I'd fix that when I put it into author, but
you
because we
didn't.
talked.
And I
Okay.
look forward to discussing that at some point because that's a very fun, very niche discussion.
Okay.
But we have three topics for today, and
Yeah,
I
too.
think we should start with some introductions, very brief, at whatever level people want to, which usually what we do with when we have new people. We have two today. No need for any specific names or references, but how would you like to be referred to, Safari Monkey? Is that a good name, or should we refer to you as something else in speech?
Yeah, yeah, or Safari, that works fine.
Okay,
Um, sorry, you caught me with a mouthful. Um,
it happens.
I do work in the industry, but I'm also not here on behalf of any particular company, so um, yeah.
And so we have a lot of people like that from Apple
Hmm.
Yeah, we can guess.
and Google. They're here, but that we can't know that they're really from there. No big deal.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
you can find me if you want to, but yeah, no,
We won't track you down.
I'm not representing anyone in
Yeah.
particular.
Yeah, I have to do that now with my university. It's the
Hmm,
American way.
yes.
Yeah.
My
Uh,
research is my own.
so, Mr. Safari, anything, so you work on the XR industry, which is great and hugely relevant. Of course, what we're doing here is looking at text and XR specifically. Is there anything else of your interest or perspective you would like to mention?
Not especially. I guess it's relevant to say I work specifically in sort of the OpenXR area, if that becomes relevant. But yeah,
Well, that's
I'm
relevant.
mostly here to listen.
We work in WebXR here. That
Yep,
helps you at
good to
all.
know.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, I'm going to keep going
And
round.
Astral Druid is back. Astral Druid, when we refer to you, do you want us to call you Astrid or Druid?
Uh, Astral. Most people call me Astral. Is my mic working?
Yes.
Let me
Yep.
check. Awesome. Um, I'm here. I think I've stopped by once in the past, and
Yeah.
this meeting has slipped off of my availability up until now. I'm I'm currently working on organizing a a not for profit XR platform to be used for public libraries as a way of and something a project I've been referring to as like an extended library commons network.
Okay. That sounds interesting for me because I have built a virtual library and museum called The Next. And we're using all open source to build it and to maintain it.
Yeah,
I have
very cool.
I have a background in just VR society essentially. You could call me an anthropologist, someone who studies how communities form and develop in this new emerging space.
That is very interesting. Yeah, I look forward to getting into that with you. Thank you.
Mm.
Um, Also, for the two new ones, it's kind of important to mention that this is very casual. If you want to come back, you're extremely welcome. You absolutely don't have to. If you come late, doesn't matter. If you have to leave early, doesn't matter. We all have lives. We don't think that's disrespectful. It just has to fit in things. So this is very, very easygoing. The only thing we're serious about is the dialogue. So very nice to have you both here and to have you back, Astral. And I'm going to ask for brief intros from all of you. 10 seconds. Tom.
Hi, I'm Tom Hames. I'm both a university lecturer and a software entrepreneur, and I'm very interested in connecting knowledge.
Wow, that was 5 seconds. Ken.
Oh, your mic's off, Pen.
Got to learn this technology stuff. I'm Ken Perlin. My handle is Ken Perlin. And so you could probably figure out who I am if you did a search and my actual name. I do computer graphics at New York University. I'm a professor there in the computer science department.
Perfect. Mark, you're next on my layout.
I guess I'm a independent researcher with a sort of academic fig leaf as a visiting fellow at Southampton, which is where I did a doctorate recently in hypertext. But my background, I think, more than anything, is fetched as an information emergency plumber. So I've decades of working at the interface between the engineers and the non-engineers, and actually trying to make functional use of information.
Thanks, Mark. By the way, for the transcripts, it's really nice to have the introductions. It helps me with tagging so much. Rob, please. Hello.
I'm Rob Swigert, lurking writer.
Lurking writer. Best ever. Peter, over to you.
Okay, I'm an independent scholar, attorney, and programmer.
Wow, even shorter. Deanie.
So I'm Nina Gergel from the West Coast. I teach at Washington State University, Vancouver. And Fred and I have been working on this project for WebXR for the past 2 years.
Yes. And yes, exactly. I just add to that. We've been working on it. It's exciting. We've learned a lot, gone down all kinds of alleys, and look forward to going further.
You missed one, Frode. Frode, you.
Yeah, no, that was me. That was me. That was me. I'm just very passionate about text for the simple reason that it isn't being worked on enough. There's a lot of investment in other media. There should also be a lot of investment in text, even if we move away from it. Most recently, to many people's chagrin, I have been working with AI orchestrated music, which I found to be phenomenally interesting. One of the things I've been doing, which you may laugh at if you go to our record on our website, is the most recent meetings I have put to music. And the reason for that, as an experiment with different layers of textures of information, is having gone through many prompts, many versions, I've come down to almost spoken poetry based on the summary, based on other things. Not to try to be verbatim or be only a joke, but the idea is one of you driving home one day want to catch up. So it's a 5-minute song, and it's only supposed to inspire because it comes out with interesting sentences, and that's it. So I've just found it an amusing aside to XR spatiality, a different dimension. So yeah, I'm very obsessed with text, but it's very, very exciting what other realms of communication feeds into that. At the end of the day, all of this is rooted in text, right? So today, Astral and Safari, are you here because you saw something on the website, or are you here as a general future text lab? I just want to know what your expectations are.
I arrived because I've been following your work for a little bit, and I was open to join.
That's nice. Thank you. That helps clarify. Safari, are you here for something
I'm
specific? Or?
not especially. I'm here to listen
Okay. Right.
and
So,
maybe contribute if I have any relevant expertise. But yeah.
no, exactly. That's the expectation. Many people come and lurk in the nice sense of the word or speak a lot. So, the three topics for today are one is listed on our website, which is a little bit of talking about single page or single article. I miswrote there, reading in XR, because I think that it is the most basic thing, but I think is also very misunderstood. But then Mark and I had a meeting earlier today about the book that we're publishing. And I'm not going to share any video, so you don't need to worry about the depth, but I'd really love your perspective on this. This book is going to be released in the usual formats, one of them PDF. When you have a relatively large book in PDF, it can be a bit of a hassle to read it. PDF is very, very frozen medium, obviously. And then we get to other things like some articles are very, very long, such as Peter's, long for a reason. Some are very, very short. So scrolling through is a very different kind of thing for different articles. So as Dini mentioned in our pre-meeting for this, back in the day when we, as a community, all of us were web-based, it wasn't that hard to have a table of contents that was just web links. You click on a link to an article and it opens on the side. Very obvious, we've all done it. When it comes to the web, the problem there is partly link rot. Things die. So if you want to do something similar with PDF, instead, in addition to having one massive document, a lot of academic PDFs are released as a single PDF per paper for proceedings. That's how we're used to seeing it, right? So how then could you have a coherent volume, to use Rob's beautiful terminology, of these individual articles? So what we've been experimenting with is using BibTeX and all kinds of open standards where we have, that's very odd. Something just started playing. Let me check. There's no one in the room. 1 second. Sorry, that was very odd. I don't know why that happened. Right. Okay. So here's the thing. By using BibTeX and different things, what we can do is produce a volume, a PDF where you have title, author, a little bit of a description, and that is clickable to open the document itself that it links to. I do have gremlins. That to me is a really big deal because what we're going to be doing now is releasing the book as one massive volume, and we're also going to be releasing it as a set of PDFs with this thing. Please help us think of a better name. Currently, we're using the term binding, which isn't that great, so that we have a way to refer to it. The idea of the excitement of this is that there will be an official one, but it also means anybody can make one. And you can make one from all the articles or other articles because it's based on taking that single article, copying it, processed, and pasting it. This is a little much to take in at the beginning of this, but the reason I feel is relevant to XR and to our discussions is how do you produce a piece of knowledge that is robust, that's part of a bigger set? How do you chain them together? That's what we're dealing with. We don't need to discuss it in depth, but I just wanted to raise it to the community.
So we're talking, Mark, about internal links off a PDF. As long as you have a folder with all the files in it, you'll be able to get to it. So we're not using the web, we're using the structure of a hyperlink, internal hyperlinks.
Internal to the user, but not internal to the document. Exactly, Dini.
Right.
Exactly. Peter.
Yeah, I rather like binding, but in the CS sense of an association between a name and a value.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be physical binding. It can actually be the conceptual binding.
Right. Okay, yeah, so we will keep experimenting with this. Hopefully we'll distribute something to the community. And Safari and Astral, if you want to email me, please feel free. That means I can send you stuff. I try not to share the email addresses, but if that's really important not to have shared, don't trust me because I'm not good with details. I managed to overshare last week. So it's really up to you, or if someone else is you want to send it to. Rob, do you mind speaking the nice sentence that you wrote?
Okay. Where is it? I imagine an orange. It comes with a cover. Remove the cover, and there's a circular set of segments that can be removed one by one.
Yeah, that's really lovely, especially because it goes in a circle. The notion, and also to the new people here, we talk a lot about clarity of data and metadata in the community because without that, all we can really build is demos that don't do anything. So these individual PDFs, in addition belonging to this binding thing, also should know about each other. So we're looking at ways where the BibTech would say something like, this precedes this, and the next one is this, that kind of stuff. So when we go into XR, no matter what it's stored on, whether it's HTML, RTF, or PDF, the system should be able to extract it and allow us to do stuff with that. So that's really important to us.
Yeah,
So
does
that-
anyone remember back in the HTML days when we were actually using links to show next document in the series, previous document in the series? Whatever happened to that? People stopped doing that.
Apps.
What were you saying, Peter? Xdoc?
No, I was remembering back when people were using the HTML headers and meta entries to indicate what's the next document in the series, what was the previous
right.
document, and
Yeah.
people stopped doing that. But for a while there was interest in linking them together using the tags.
Hmm.
But maybe it was
Mark,
just a lack of tooling support.
good point, Peter. Really good point. Thank you. Mark?
I was just thinking, one thing I'm noticing beginning to creep in now as we move away from being so quite so formally print centric is that instead of going for things like journals, instead of having sequential page numbers, which had a necessity and a use if you had a lot of literal books on the shelf, is now that the numbering, if there is numbering, will be within the article, and then the articles are numbered. So you'll see a number something like sort of 4 hyphen 1 through 23 or something, rather than 1 through 23, meaning I'm going to point you at the 4th article in this, essentially in this binding, in this collection, which makes a lot more sense now that things aren't essentially only available in the original form that we're most used to.
Exactly. And the problem we're trying to deal with here is there's a lot of AI horrible articles out there now that are polluting the space. Plus, even before the AI boom, people often wouldn't follow links. They wouldn't follow citations because it was cumbersome. You have to go to the back, copy stuff, find it online, download it, all of that stuff. Even web links sometimes weren't followed because there's an expectation of a download page. And I can't remember where it was. I saw one academic article to make this point that had citations. If you clicked on them, they said, "Oh my goodness, I can't believe you clicked on this. Hardly anyone does." So if we're going to have a thriving future academic community with AI and other issues, where people don't only cite the safe articles, they need instant access to the source without any effort whatsoever. Dini?
Yeah, I mean, the problem is that we don't want to click on anything anymore. I mean,
Yeah.
before I click on anything, I track it down on the web. I try to triangulate what it is. That's why we ask when people send us things like, what is this? And so by sending them the articles with the hyperlinked table of contents, which is essentially what you're suggesting, we know what we're clicking on, right? Essentially, or
Yeah.
should.
Yeah, it becomes a safe environment. Thank you, Dini. It's safe, fast, and because the way it's created is through an advanced copy and paste, BapeTech, it's robust. You don't have to retype anything. Peter?
Yeah, we also have a problem with deep linking, especially as we start getting away from physical print. Now, what happens when you're in a stretch text world where you no longer necessarily even have a fixed order of paragraphs because you may have expanded several nodes above the item you're citing into, so they might not all be visible at the time. It just completely shifts the whole perspective so that we should maybe be using view spec query kinds of things as opposed to trying to do hard links to specific points.
Right. So that leads into the second and main topic of the day, which is reading one paper in XR. Astral and Safari, I expect you both spent time in XR to some extent. May I ask you if you have used also high-end headsets like the Vision Pro in terms of pixel count for reading?
Not quite Vision Pro, but I do use a big screen beyond, which is 2.5K
Oh yeah, the
instead
big
of
screen beyond is very
3.5.
good. I'm going to share my screen. Please feel free to talk because when we look at what Peter just said, of course, it's been a little bit asleep. Of course, we would like to have more opportunities than just reading something flat. Hang on, it's getting ready to allow me to share. It was a bit snoozy. Okay, very good. No, that's not where I wanted to view. All right, here we go. You can see my screen, right? No. This eye stuff is fantastic when it works, but that's not every time.
We can
We're
see
seeing you in the
not
headset,
not the screen.
Yeah, we're just seeing you perform.
Yeah, it keeps giving me the wrong thing. I keep asking for mirror my view, and it does virtual. Okay, here we go. Well, this is a waste of time. What's going on?
Oh, just out of curiosity, has anyone ever run down the full transitive closure of everything referred to directly and indirectly from a single paper?
Can you say that again, please?
Has anyone ever tried to run down the complete transitive closure of everything referred to directly or indirectly, as many steps out as it takes to get to the point where you actually have every single thing that is referenced from the original source?
That's
I
what I'm
have
actually trying to build with the
that
Knowledge
I have,
Navigator.
Peter. I mean, that's what scholars do.
Whoa.
And I've been an editor of Leonardo now for 23 years. I have to track down a lot of stuff. And even with your papers, when I was editing them this past week, if you had a citation, I looked up that citation and I checked page numbers. So yeah, that's pretty standard, right?
Yeah, but I mean the complete transitive closure of everything. So not just the original paper, but also then to run down and acquire every reference in each paper that it cites and so forth until
Oh
you've got
God, yeah.
everything in the collection and there's nothing else to go to that isn't available immediately.
Yeah,
This is when we all find
yeah,
out we're all related to King Charles.
Yes.
yep,
Well,
yeah.
well, while I'm in the headset, you can see what I see now, right?
We see your desk.
No, we looking at your
Yeah.
desk now.
Really? There must be something wrong with. Okay, that's very, very odd. Okay, hang on. I'm going to do a share again. I just updated the Now,
There
now
you
you
go.
can see
Now we
it.
can see it.
Okay, good. So I'll make this very dark and say hi to Santa Claus. Right. So there's my point. It's a really brief point. Here's one of the articles for our book. And it's easy to think in a headset, we have all kinds of flexibility. But if we want something to be really readable, it has to be, even in this incredible display, of a certain size, like even on a regular one. And we need a bit of a layout. Now, I agree, the margin, center margin's a bit big here. But then, unless we walk around, which of course we should consider, to read an article, this is probably like a normal large screen. It's probably quite good. Because if we then go into something like this, if I now go take this one, this is the ACM hypertext for a few years ago, and I have more than one page open, and I skim through like this. Once it's on the side, it's not that readable. So we don't actually have that much active space. So that's funny, that was mine. And of course, it can curve, as many of you have experienced with. But the idea is when we talk about reading an article in XR, it's easy to have all kinds of great ideas. But where do you put this extra stuff? Right? It's not necessarily straightforward. That's the only point I wanted to make on that. I will stop sharing now. And maybe I
I
could.
guess my question is, when people do look at our work, do they want to see everything?
That's the
most
perfect
people
question.
barely, really and truly, we're at our symposium in London, right? We had, who was it presenting? That was David Millard. He also presented the same idea at the ACM conference in Chicago, and that is, we're not writing for humans anymore, we're writing for machines, and humans aren't really reading anymore. And so if that's the case, then what are we producing for that XR environment? How much do we really want to give somebody? Are they really going to read?
Well, I'm going to give the mic to Ken in a second, but we want to give them as little as possible, but no less. Absolutely, following the old ones. And I do think there will be a premium on human writing soon, because it is way too easy to produce too much writing. But Ken, over to you. So I'm going to go close the window.
Frode, in your not counting sort of idealistic ideas, in your actual life, do you is Frode still there? Oh, there you are. Okay, I see you got moved. You got moved on my screen. That's why. Okay. It's okay. You're muted, by the way.
Yes, yes.
In your actual life, you have, as I see it, three reasonable options for reading an article. You can read it on paper. You can read it on the screen of whatever computer you usually use, or you can read it by putting on your headset and doing what you were just doing. What do you prefer?
I'll answer that properly. In my personal life, I do actually really like reading on paper, but not academic articles, because I don't like the layout. There's too tiny, to this and that. But that's just me. Well, that's a personal opinion. But paper is nice. I read my books on paper. I don't read on a Kindle or anything like that. Normally, I read on the laptop. However, the quality of reading a PDF, just a normal PDF in the headset, to me is phenomenal because it's a really comfortable size. So especially if I'm traveling, I do actually read academic articles on there. But of course, that's a bit of a cop out that it's possible. I believe part of your question, Ken, is what's the benefit of these different media? And what I'm trying to tease out here with you guys is it's so easy to think of a XR environment where we have a index card worth of information here and something here and all of that stuff. That's quite okay, but to get a gist of an article, you need to at least read the abstract. You need to have some of it. So the layout for that probably should be rectangular because it's really comfortable to read. And once you have that, then you're already spending a lot of space. So I'm hoping to get some provocation here with you guys into how to expand that. And that's why we talked in the introduction today, how to bind things together. Because we need to have open, accessible ways to piece pieces of knowledge together. The excitement for me with this whole binding thing is I would love, Ken, for you to give me a binding of documents you expect me to have, whether it's computer graphics or our community or whatever it is, that isn't just citations, but I can read, and it's close to an annotated bibliography, where on each you may have written a sentence or put a topic or not, and I can instantly open that, whether I'm in a headset or not. And if it's in a headset, then we can get close to what Peter was saying and have a virtual life of that behind it in citations. But still, the main reading is probably something like that. I hope that at least partially addressed your question, Ken.
Yeah, I think what I was teasing out was I definitely understand that the advantage of reading on a screen over paper, to the extent that there is one based on the nature of what you're reading, is that it's mutable. Things change. You can have summaries. You can have all sorts of things that are done right then and there live for you, as opposed to just having receive what was published. What I'm trying to tease out is how have we discovered practically as opposed to theoretically then some advantage in our access of those documents going from screen to VR or XR. And that's where I'm sort of trying to wrap my head around where that delta is.
This is a really, really, really important discussion. And one of the distinctions I believe we have found over the last 2 years is the difference between an annotation and the document itself, by which we have come to define, again, I believe, I may be mistaken, in our community that an annotation is the stuff the reader put on, which, the author can put endnotes and all kinds of stuff, but annotation is separate. And it's really, really important to be able to do that and track it. An annotation, and this comes out of the work that Dini was heading with Fabienne when three of us were working together, but she was really in charge of, which was annotation shouldn't necessarily just be a highlight. It can also be literally taking something out into space. And then an annotation becomes something else. So if you stretch the definition, this binding stuff is also a kind of annotation, right? Because it's your view. And the way you're talking about being able to have mutable information, my late father and I used to argue, because my philosophy is of liquid information. He said information needs to be solid. So I think, Ken, that also reflects on your question. That's why these different kinds of clarity of data is important, because the original source you should always have access to, no matter how you chop and change it. But you should have the option for different views, right? Peter.
Yeah, I also find that automatically generated views can be really helpful, either just like a word cloud or the more detailed concordance views that Devon Think provides me are really, really helpful in deciding which documents I want to open up and dive into at a given time. Also, I could see using an island grammar to be able to abstract out of it high-level argument structure and have that as also a guidance. So imagine for the island grammar, you structure it using synsets, so you're not using specific words, then have the system go through the document and find all those argument pivots and the overall structure of the dialogue, and then provide a visualization of that you could have. So it wouldn't be an author-generated outline so much as a machine-generated spine pulled out of the document based upon syntax terminology when you're switching and pivoting topics.
Well, this is what was so exciting about what Dini was talking about earlier. Who are we writing for? Now we have to expect our text to be parsed and LLM'd and all kinds of things. So to be able to put things in our text saying, by the way, this next section is blah, 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 and it has semantic meaning, might be very useful for those automatic views. Absolutely, Peter. Tom, please.
Well, actually, I just want to riff off of what you just said. Who are we writing this for? One of the ideas I thought about just now as we were talking about this, and I put it in the chat, but I wanted to highlight it, is the idea that a user of the book could chart a customized pathway through the book based on their interests. So, and it goes, instead of reading one article, it goes and says, Tom said this, Deanie said this, Ken said this, blah, blah, blah. And then it gives you essentially a customized paper that's focused on the topic you're interested in, with pivots to deep dives into any one of those sections, or something like that. That would be really cool to have.
That's exactly, Tom, what we aim to do with the binding, to be able to have a mechanism to put that into a thing. Astral and then Deanie.
So a thought that I have is like when we're talking about annotations, we're talking about the conversations that happen around texts. And I'm reminded of like taking out a library book and just finding that someone has written in the margins, and kind of what of a delight that can be. It leads a kind of like a guiding trail that other people followed. I believe that like utilizing the social aspects of these mediums allow us to connect interpersonally with other people that could be reading that text as well, is a possibility. Also, when we're talking about workspaces as well, like when I'm reading a text, I kind of wish I had like when you're in a library, you can just go and grab another text and just open that book on the table in front of you. And like you go to the bibliography, and that one you find another text you want, you have to lay that out. Having the opportunity to just automatically like array these texts and then like maybe literally draw lines between them would be helpful.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you.
Marginalia is a term you're thinking of, Astral. So, in fact, there's a really good book that came out, I want to say 10 years ago, about the really famous marginalia that people have collected over the years from various artists and thinkers. It's a really good book. I'll go get it, and I'll put the link here for you. I was going to say what's interesting about what's happening today, and the fact that we don't know who our audience is. The audience could very well be machines, right? Is that it's forcing academics to think differently about how they write and what they say. And not everything they say and do and think gets published anymore, or should be published anymore. And that the desire to publish, or the concept of publish or perish, has really disappeared from academe. Those of us that are in academe know it's not so much what we publish anymore. It's not so much how much we publish, but what we say and what our readership is. And so who are our readers, and how do we track them? How do we know they're reading us? And I was just thinking this past weekend, I'm working on my Internet Revolutions course that I'm teaching this spring, and I'm prepping for it for the first time. Getting a book like How the Internet Works, and going through it line by line and making notes so that I can have good information for lecturing. That's a deep read.
Mm-hmm.
So, determining how people are going to read it, looking up the resources. So if the person cites this, I go and find that book. So there is that kind of reading, and it's purposeful reading, as I would call it. We have to read because we need specific information. And then I just literally swallowed 2 books, Hamnet, and also the new book, Flesh, that won the Booker Award. I read them within a week. I literally just ate them like candy, right? Just consumed them fast because it was just so good to read. So the way we read, and why we read is getting actually more attention in academe. Hi, Brandel. So I think it's important to think about how we structured this book. And what Frodo was talking about this morning with me is organizing the text so that we can actually curate specific parts of it. Now, in a regular book, like if I was doing a collection for myself, I would have parts, and I'd say part 1, internet history, part 2, AI machine reading, part 3, and I would take all of our articles and organize them by that. And we haven't been doing that necessarily with the future of text, but the way Frodo has structured the book, we can indeed do that, right, easier than we had in the past. So it's not anything new. It's just the way the book is now structured to be able to do that. And he's talking about us being able to organize these so we can say, this is Deanie's choices. So Deanie's interested in, XR and libraries and museums and art, right? So here's all the articles from the symposium that dealt with that. That's Sam Brooker's Mariush's and mine and a few other people. Here is somebody else's. So, putting together these curated groupings from the book and then being able to put them in an XR space and read them as XR environments. I'll stop there.
That's Danny, that's wonderful. I just want to highlight one thing before I give the mic over to Safari. It also means what we can do is that in one binding, again, maybe find a better term, it could be the Dini section. Now, Danny and I are the editors, so everything is our section. And then there could be the Ken section. These are the bits that Ken says and writes a little bit. It means that we can have multiple. Okay, so I don't know if you guys listen to music on YouTube, but there's a lot of DJs. What are DJs? They're curators, right? We can have multiple curations of the same knowledge by different people. And Mark Anderson is a great example. He knows more about hypertext than I will ever do. I would love to see his curated list, for instance. So now we're experimenting with traditional media in order to make it go bigger through the metadata in XR. Thank you for that. And Safari, please go ahead.
Yeah, this was something that I was thinking about right at the start when you were talking about having links saying this is the next thing and this is the previous thing, is that is that sort of linked list kind of approach seems potentially fairly fragile, and it gives that entity the authority. I think back to web rings and that sort of thing. If you had a web ring, which was a thing where you, like, all of these sites would link to each other in a big ring, and one of those had any kind of issues, then you would lose the ring. If two of them had issues, then you would, they would become entirely disjoint. They wouldn't even link in a line. And also this was something where I was thinking along those similar lines of the curation of what forms a work is actually something which is not necessarily something that has to be owned by the work. And also doing so allows you to, if you have, if you want to add a chapter, then you would otherwise have to modify the previous and next chapters to say that. And you could express that could be a useful way of expressing it, but also having that kind of virtual table of contents that actually says this is what makes up this work is a different and valuable way of doing things. And just to mention the other thought that the other relevant thing that I wanted to mention was, I don't know if you're familiar with Gwern's work. It's a pseudonymous writer, Gwern Branwen, who has a blog, and anytime you click, for example, on a Wikipedia link on his blog, it pops up in a little pop-up, and then you can click on other links on that page and they'll pop up in sort of pop-ups, and so it forms almost a windowing system of references within the space of that blog website. I think it's a very interesting thing that maybe does some of the things that you're interested in this.
That's really interesting. If you could please put a link to that in the chat, if you have one, that would be great.
I'll try.
Thank you. As to comment on the first bit you said, by the way, this is so much fun. I'm so grateful for this particular dialogue. What we're looking at here is, Ted Nelson had the notion of God the author and God the reader, right? And that's been a constant push-pull, who should control how things should appear, how they should connect. So the idea here is, Danny and I will publish, in the case of our Future of Textbook, a canonical reference you download from our page, and that's that. But anybody should be able to do anything else that they want, because these bindings are just collections of individual other articles. So let's say if Brandel thinks that what we published is brilliant, but he wants to add an article from last year and share it with you, he can do that. But then it's no longer published by Dini and me, that particular set. But the individual articles stay solid by themselves. Does that make sense?
No, because we'll always be the editors. We always do the labor of the collection and the editing of the work. So no,
Yep.
they won't author it. They will be they'll be a curator. So it'll be edited by Frode Hagelin and Dina Gregar, curated by Mark Anderson.
I think that is a very useful distinction, Deanie. Thank you. And
You're welcome.
Mark,
You're
earlier
welcome.
today, the technical method that you can do this creation, I had called it something, and Mark was very careful and said, "Don't over-label it." So thank you, Deanie. We shouldn't. Yeah, we should be careful. There's a huge difference between editor and curator, exactly.
Peter,
And
you just wrote in here, editor versus curator. Does that mean you want me to explain it, or you like it?
No, I like it, like it. I'm just
Oh,
trying to get
good.
the terms in the chat because the chat's kind of what persists afterwards. I go back and say, what did we talk about?
You know, it's interesting because I do a lot of curation for art, right? And shows, and I don't make the work. I'm not curating my work. I'm curating your work. I'm just picking among us for maybe the top 5 I want to show for a reason, not because they're the best, but because they fit a particular theme, right? So yeah, curation is really the better word for it. Thank you, Tom.
Yeah, good.
We like to think reader is the end user of this thing.
Well, more people read than write. That's sort of the same thing for code, anything.
yeah, good point.
People are passive.
I do want to mention really quickly, for the past couple of years, I've been teaching, I teach resume writing in my senior capstone course because I want my students to get jobs. For the last 3 years, I've been teaching ATS resume writing. So they're writing now resumes for the machine. And I'm also now training them how to do mock interviews online in a Zoom environment and in a chat situation so that they chat for their first interview with a machine. And it's really freaking them out to learn how to do this. And what I keep telling them is they probably won't talk to a human being until maybe the second or third interview, if that. So their first audience is going to be a machine, and maybe their second audience is still a machine. And there's different types of machines that they're talking to. So now we're talking about rhetorical situations for machine audiences. There's a paper that I should write, right? Astrid, you're looking upside down. Absolutely.
Peter Wasilko, please.
Okay. I've actually found that I'm putting more explicit flags when I'm having a dialogue with one of the large model AIs to help it follow transitions in the conversation. So I'll explicitly call out to when we were discussing a long time before or just recently, pivoting back to this new topic, putting on your literary agent hat, kinds of expressions like that to really help guide it. Things that I wouldn't do if I was talking to one of you, but certainly I'm adding more flags and breadcrumbs for the LLM, and it seems to tremendously improve its results. All this discussion also reminds me of JCR Licklider's Libraries of the Future and his Procog system, where the catalog would be proactively surfacing next things that you might want to look at. So building a recommender system in. Then when I'm thinking about my work with extended collections, something that factors in is scheduling resources. So, for instance, if I get a new book from Interlibrary Loan and I discover in the preface of the book that this was actually one of 2 volumes published with proceedings of this conference, I'll immediately go and put in an Interlibrary Loan request for the second volume while still reading the first volume. If I know that some of the references are available through my local county library system, then I'll defer them for a while because I know that I can get them back within a fixed 2 to 7 day window. If I know that the book is going to be coming in from Syracuse University, I know that I have to allot more time to it. So there's sort of this notion of temporal distance to a citation. And if we could capture that in metadata, it could be really useful. And also looking at the nature of the books, if we had that metadata. For instance, maybe I'm not really interested in the author's take, but I'm actually trying to scavenge for quotes that were written by Henry Lieberman. So I know that a particular book is citing some of his work. If I knew ahead of time that that book made use of a lot of direct quotations, then I want to pull that book in. If it was just mentioned in passing, I wouldn't. And we don't really have the metadata on what the nature of the book's content is. Is it all just like an original high level discussion, or is it citing to specific projects to pick them apart? Um, is it heavily laden with illustrations? If I'm doing World's Fair research, I'm more interested in heavily illustrated books, and you can't always get that kind of information readily available from catalog metadata. Some
Yeah.
entries are really nice and they have annotations in the catalog entries telling you that there are 197 illustrations. That's, yes, this is going to be really good for that purpose. But if you don't have that high level metadata overview, you have to wind up pulling all the books physically and performing that work yourself, which really slows the velocity of your research.
So, Peter, this really important, and just briefly on this, this is partly what we're doing with the BibTeX visual meta and all of that stuff. But there's a really important distinction between inherent metadata, this is heading level 2, and external, this is an important book, or any of these classification systems and all of that. That's partly why we're doing the binding notion, because let's say you have a specialist subject area in something, you write that. And then we can choose to read that because it's many of these things we shouldn't trust to automatic systems. So, Peter, this is a really good point. Thank you. And over to the West Coast.
I was just was an aside from a while ago, but I actually met Gwen and a bunch of other people and got them to sign my copy of Nelson's Computer Lib at the occasion of the 50th. Um, uh, James Risbert put on an event. He owns the rights to distribute all of the sort of facsimile copies that are in this kind of original form. Although they did have some of the versions like you have, Mark Anderson, that were very funny. I like the sort of the idea of kind of dressing this up as though it's more of a textbook, which it very isn't. But I would be really interested in the varying form and how it reads as a consequence of being represented like that. The other thing that I wanted to talk about was the sort of the one was the Dini rightly characterizing the different role of people. Something that Bill Buxton is very keen on is making sure that people understand that participatory design does not make the participants designers because they are not doing the same work. They are participants and they are making things with it and they are informing the outcomes, but it's not the same. And we do it functionally ourselves and then everybody else a disservice when we do that. But finally, I wanted to talk about um, uh, understanding media. Sorry, the book Understanding Media, and something that was really interesting. I've been thinking about how to organize and arrange information like this for a long time. And I was speaking to Andrew McLuhan, the grandson of Marshall McLuhan, a couple of years ago. And he said that the first 7 chapters are a primer that is very clear and linear and, well, to the extent that Marshall wrote anything like that. And then the next 25 or something are just kind of etudes. They're random access kind of entries that you can kind of pick and choose as magazines between. And it made me really want to look at the form of browsing those things. One is a tutorial mode, and then the remainder is this kind of thing that you can kind of view and peruse and pick from at your leisure, and to have an affordance, a visual affordance that you might be able to make use of in order to encourage people to kind of view it with that as their sort of capability and their right to be able to kind of view in that way, because there's such a strong implicit uh, structure to what somebody's supposed to do with a book by virtue of it being presented in this way. So I think I'm really excited by the idea of future of text being constructed with a meta affordance of being able to construct an affordance in this way. And I would love to, it's something that I'm thinking about with Vision Pro. And how do you make it so that reading is nice? How do you make it so that people have this sort of view of like what to do and then how to do and then decide to do it. I feel like we haven't gotten there with digital reading, and even aside from the physical sort of challenges of sorry, even aside from the informational abilities and opportunities that come from having something nonlinear, that the actual sort of challenges of digital reading simply not being as fun and nice to do are something that we will probably need help from the former to overcome as well.
Well, that was a lot. Thank you. Randall, before we move on, a lot of great stuff, but do you have any specific questions for the group about that very interesting range?
That's very generous of you, Frode.
I'm not saying you need to, but in case you do.
So one of the things, Safari Monkey, I took your point about the challenges of, sort of Galapagos speciation, web rings breaking down. Some of that is to do with hypertext, and some of that is to do with the fragility of hypertext. Do you feel like there's a difference between what you can do with the structure and the superstructure over a collection of things when you have a hardbound guarantee of the existence of it? Because that's the internet is both at once. Whereas in something like a fixed volume of sets of things in future of text, that's not going to be added to or removed from over time, I presume. So there are slightly different sort of priorities and challenges that come from it. Does anybody have any view about how to disentangle one from the other?
Well, I would argue that the index was how, and table of contents is what book culture developed in order to do this kind of hypertextual aspect of print, right? I mean, that's what they are.
Yeah.
That's why they came about. And what made hypertext so cool was that we could do it now, but just by clicking, right? That made it so much easier. We didn't have to go back to the end of the book. So I think that we've already tried to solve that problem. And the problem we haven't solved yet, though, Brandel, is what the knowledge object looks like in that space and how it should behave. I mean, that's the thing we struggled with for 2 years now. And we still haven't come up with the idea of that. So I think it's not just the hypertext that needs to be rethought, but what that knowledge object really looks like and how we experience it, how we interact with it. That's still not, we didn't get very far with that. And that's one disappointment with our project. At the same time, we have a lot of different directions we can go. So there's a lot of excitement about not having found the answer, right, in 2 years. And it's not going to be possible, I don't think, very quickly.
Oh, we're getting there. We're getting there. But yes, it's learning more about the complexity and the problem for sure. And
Well, we
that's a
could do
good
different
segue.
things. I mean, what we could have done with proprietary software is really different than what we were doing with WebXR. And we were determined to stay in open languages, right? But if we
Yes.
wanted to, I mean, we're facing this in the next right now. There's so much I can do with the visualization space if I use Unreal, Unity, that I cannot do with WebXR right now. Maybe in a year, maybe in 6 months, maybe in 2 years, but not right now. And so we're at a point in the lab to decide what direction we're going to go for the things we really want to do. And we might very well make a proprietary version of the Viz space and put it on the Apple Store, so that people can see that vision while we're waiting for WebXR to catch up. That's where we
Yes.
are.
No, no,
WebXR is not going to catch up.
Yeah.
but also, sorry, Ken, just really briefly, what I found from developing Author and Reader for Vision Pro is currently, with all due respect to the fruit company, the development system is really, really, really limited. One of the things we cannot do, as an example, is a piece of software cannot open an external document without the open dialog, right? And that has huge implications, like the things we're talking about binding. If you have in a native application, you cannot say open that document from another document and expect to have it open. It won't do it. So going native isn't necessarily more powerful, and that's the nuances we're learning. Now, Ken, quickly, before anyone else, including me.
I'm responding to something, Frode, you said probably about 20 something minutes ago. I think that Ted's idea of things is more radical than, I know it's 60 years ago, but it's more radical than the way we think about things today. And I think he still thinks this now. We could ask him. If you think about who owns what, his concept of hypertext is that in the world that he was envisioning, everything has fractional ownership. You write a text, I overlay over it, someone overlays over that, and each of us owns a fraction of the result. And that's the way to think about it from Ted's point of view. I know that's not the way we think about it now, but I think we should correctly characterize what his mindset is.
That is a very important and under-discussed aspect of the Teddyverse, for sure. And of course, it adds serious complexity, but we're at a point in history now where we should deal with complexity. Mr. Anderson, and then Peter, and then we're going to jump a little bit into next year's stuff, if that's cool with everyone.
Okay, just quickly picking up on something earlier that sort of seems to be running through a number of things, in that we tend to lose sight of scale. I mean, Peter very presciently asked the question: has anyone done a sort of total deconstruction of all the linkage you might find in a out from a document? To which my immediate sort of mental reaction was, well, this is the total perspective vortex, and that ends badly for us. So the fact that we terribly easily say, wouldn't it be wonderful if, and we just imagine an endless amount of stuff, but we also tend to know that presented with that much contextual information, normally we either just get lost, overloaded, or we end up, reading about, I don't know, narrow gauge railways in South America or something like Wikipedia. You just pull off from your thing. So there is a challenge with scale. And I think one of the reasons we don't address it is it's damned hard, because the first thing you actually have to do is to build that whole sort of data set. And most people give up. Most of us, I think, just give up too easily. My own experience of me even making quite a small data set was, it took me 3 years of evenings, spare time, just build something done properly by a human, not trusting machines, because I'd found out that they just copy each other's errors, just to get to the point where I said, well, what does this actually look like? And that does make me think that one way that we can address that problem is to think more readily of sort of a focus-based decomposition. Just know that, yes, there is a much wider amount of stuff that we could have contingent to what we want to look at. So maybe the challenge is not to just try and build the whole thing out, but to actually work out what is most usefully contingent, and this idea that maybe your focus drives where you see more, because just seeing more of everything is liable to not be helpful, because it's just going to destroy your focus.
Absolutely, and that's partly why I put on the headset earlier, to remind us it isn't infinite space, despite being everything. Peter, really briefly, please. We need to move on to a little bit of next year stuff.
Okay, I think we worry too much about maintaining our privacy and not enough about what we could do with more permissive sharing. Imagine that all of our readers are instrumented, so then every time someone highlights something in a work that we've written, or makes a copy of it, saves it off to Devon Think, does a quotation from it, asks its reference management system to cache away a citation at the back. All that information could be aggregated, so I wouldn't have any idea who did it, but I would know that these particular references were of the most interest to the people who've read this document, because they're in super bold text. So I know that this has been downloaded hundreds of times, that these quotations were being heavily, and even just like lingered time on given pages. So I could know that whoever was reading this thing spent an awful lot of time reading chapter 3. So maybe I should write more stuff that's similar to the content in chapter 3.
Thank you, Peter. Just briefly on the sidelines here, we're talking about fragility and so on, and how it is. Okay, so Mark Henderson and me, we are both PhD alumni of University of Southampton. We're early days with Chris Gutteridge, who was there. He works there. We discussed a lot of addressability. It shouldn't just be one way to connect something, which is why with an academic normal document, you have the author name, title, and date. You have a DOI, you have a web link, you have a document name. So there needs to be many dimensions to go between them. It shouldn't just be next and previous, absolutely. Now, I'm very grateful that we have two newbies here, so to speak. I'm going to share this briefly with you. This is not something to read all today, but to give you a general impression. And if you have feedback, that would be great. So now we are in 2025, obviously, and we're looking at 2026. So we haven't put any topics in for the new people. We had many topics last year. We had theme discussions, we had presentations by people, and we did, yeah, we had summaries. We are now working on better summaries. Here's the full video, highlights, people mentioned, and the silly song. So going forward, if we click on 2026, there is as I said, it's empty, but we have a welcome statement. And if you feel like reading it on your own time, you're absolutely welcome to. But there's a few bits to highlight to take the temperature of the room. Next year, we'll be even more focused on building tools so that we can continue doing what we call experiment to experience. It's one thing to talk about it, and that's crucial, but we also need to be able to experience things as much as possible. An important approach to this comes from the obvious thing that speaking and thinking is not the same thing. So this is Kahneman and Tversky, thinking fast, thinking slow, obviously. When we speak, generally we are drawing on our subconscious, what we know. If we want to learn something new, we really need to slow down. And when we do that, we use our working memory, but often we use pen and paper or whatever can extend our minds, right? So I believe it is important for us to try to extend our thinking spaces. And even though we haven't found many answers yet, I think we all share a notion that XR can tremendously include our thinking space for thinking slow, deliberate, change our minds, learn new things. So that is explicitly the direction we're going in. Who to augment first, obviously reference to Doug. The bold bit is all we need to look at, which is reinventing reading and writing for anyone who's interested in thinking with text. If they're academics or not, shouldn't really matter. But it's for people who are serious about that. And here's another key bit. We'll focus on connecting through citations and structure, as well as shaping through spatial arrangements, thought, the interactions to enable this, and the underlying data to make it possible. They're not really separatable. And then there's all kinds of stuff about XR, and basically it says one of the things that I at least feel I have learned over the last 2 years is in XR, I'm still a person with two eyes. It's not a free floating thing. A lot of the abstractions we thought about just doesn't make sense. And we need to look at different kinds of scales. And the discussion we had about bindings and so on is really, really important because citations are important, but also how you connect within a work. So to do is to learn, obviously. That's why we're going to be trying to do many demos as we have been doing over the last 2 years, even though next year is as yet unfunded. We'll build what we can. And then the dialogue in the community. We have the office hours. We got over 500 of them recorded. And I'm writing a bit here. I hope it doesn't sound too stern. I'll try to make it a little better. But we are a very casual group, but also focused. But there are some things we should try not to rabbit hole anymore. Like we decided early on that we should stop comparing PDF and HTML. That's an example. We need to be more specific. So for example, when we're talking about reading, we should try to make clear what aspect of reading we're talking about. I've noticed in many of our conversations, one person may think about deep reading at that point. Another person may think of skimming. One person may think of similar different things while authoring. And also, if we talk about AI, as Mark and my friend and colleague says, it should really be called advanced IT, Les Carr, because it's a bucket of stuff and it's so easy to oversimplify it. It's really important that we try to do that in our language.
So can I ask you a question before you get too much further because you're not stopping? What abstractions are you talking about that we should avoid?
Well,
I'm
it's
not following that.
a really good question, Dini. When thinking about
I only ask good questions, Frode.
it's a particularly good question.
Okay.
Well, I mean, like this year, we've been working on authoring, and there are so our language, the English language, is doesn't have, for instance, when you write stuff just sentence by sentence, and then later on you decide that sentence should go here. I guess that's part of editing, right? But it's very different from the editing that you've just done for the book, where you go through, it's like, here's a grammatical mistake, or that citation is wrong. So I want us to have more nuance when we speak about something, because if it's just taking stuff from brain to paper, that's a very different part of the writing experience than trying to organize your thoughts into moving this here and there. That's what I mean.
So,
So when we,
okay, so that's interesting because so there's different kinds of editing. And so what I didn't do with this book was what I do with the Leonardo journal, which I go through each article, and I've got like 7 right now due at the end of this month. And I actually read them for veracity. And then they're already been reviewed once. I review them a second time. And if I think that they don't fit into the journal, or I think that their information's not correct, then we don't publish it. And we didn't do that with this book. We took everything anybody sent us, even if even if we disagree with things that were discussed, right? I mean, I don't know. We took everything.
Yeah.
And so I did what I call light editing.
Yeah.
Look for the grammar, look for the usage, all that kind of stuff, but also looking up citations, right, to make sure the page numbers were correct. I did do that, but it's pretty light editing. We didn't really edit the book in the sense that editing gets done.
No, absolutely. That's really, really important. The book, as we finally described it, is a written symposium. So it's very close to the casual nature of the annual symposium that we've been hosting for quite a while. What I'm referring to here really is our Monday meetings. So this is not so much about what we're writing. It is about in our discussion. It's what we're learning is teasing out unintentional confusion and differences. So if somebody says, "Oh, well, I'm reading this," fine. Often the term readings is absolutely enough, but very often with the specificity that we use in our community, it's important to say, when I'm reading something that's in front of me, I slowly want to get it into my head. It's a very different process to checking citations. So I've noticed very often, not very often, a few times people argue kind of a different point than what the original point, and we go a little bit in circles. That's all I meant. So it's not so much about the book as notions for our dialogue. Does that make more sense?
Yeah, and I guess another question I have is that you're showing us what next year is going to be. Are you asking for input, or is this how it's going to roll out? I think that's a question that people might be thinking.
I'm asking for input. The general notion is we over the years, every year, especially last year and this year, we've been trying to have a bit more useful structure. So this is a draft. It's an RFC, if you want to call it that. If someone violently disagrees, great, talk to me, and maybe you'll convince me something else. If there's a small point where I've just written something quite stupid, very easy to change. But it is a bit of a welcome to new people in the community, so I hope it's reflecting what we already do, which is why the last bit here, which is the record itself, which, by the way, what's below is just a suggestion for this themes we'll have to talk about, and then I have a silly thing. But even the prompt for our analysis, I think it's really important for the community to be a part of. What I have done so far is removed what we had before, which was a summary of every speaker, because too often there would be a little issue, and that little issue could be really huge for that person. So now it's more about we discuss these topics and that kind of stuff. So yeah, if you want to have a look at that now or later, that's great. But the next few weeks until suddenly it's all next year, very much including Safari and Astral as fresh perspectives, it would be very useful if there's any feedback. The point of the whole community, to remind ourselves, is to encourage deep and rich dialogue. And that means to continue to be respectful as we are, to continue to get a more diverse set of viewpoints, and to have really wide-ranging discussions within the themes, which is why we're going to be continuing with the theme discussions to try to not go everywhere every time. So, you know what, Dini, thank you for those questions. I will ask everyone else, is there anything specifically you feel should be kind of written down as to how you want next year to go? So you don't feel you need to read the whole thing and get back to me and whatever. Ken, since you made that expression first, is there anything you want more of or less of than what you've
That
experienced?
expression meant I can't think of anything I'd want to change.
Okay, that's not a bad thing. Peter?
I really like how we're going. I'd like to see us maybe try to decouple the visualization aspect from the underlying data model work.
Yeah, that very much speaks to what Dean and I just discussed in terms of what do you mean? You know, when we get into a discussion of what do you mean, I've noticed that Mark and I very often tend to talk about the same thing from two different perspectives. Now that we understand that better, we can clarify that in a meeting. Also, we should have very specific discussions on thanks, Rob. I'll check that again. Very specific discussions on the data models, on the stuff. Not everybody cares about every aspect. Not everybody should have to come and find out it's not their topic and then slink off, right? Of course you can, but it's much better. And also, really important to highlight, guys, we do have an iCal for this. And I do actually put the theme or the person doing presentation. So if you go on the website on the record and you subscribe, I update that. So you should be able to see ahead of time, at least if it's a major thing, what our theme is for that time. And please feel free to email me or whatever. Oh, it's on the record page, Peter. Please look at the link. Hang on. It's actually worth us all having a quick look at. So we go back. So here on Future Text Lab, record and schedule, because it's the same thing. The schedule is for the future. The record is the same entry, but suddenly there's something there. And here is the add to calendar. I really think the add to calendar iCal is one of those modern infrastructures that's way underused. Astral, I'm reading what you have. Okay. Well,
Astro, I'd love to talk to you more because we're, like I said, we built a library museum that's virtual called The Next. And have worked on metadata and ways to rethink typical library, processes because they don't work for the digital world, including, naming things and working with the Library Congress, designations for names and titles. We had to make up something for 3D Modeler, for example. So stuff like that. So I'd love to talk to you more about that.
I'd be happy to. Thank you.
It's more concrete, but I would love to talk about the fact that the 1.0 specification for OpenUSD was released last week. So that's very exciting. It means that we have a file format that hopefully will be able to represent things and to be able to interface with a lot of things. We had the all hands meeting a couple months ago or last month, where I saw people integrate USD. This universal scene description of the United States dollar with Microsoft Project, because that's the foundational set of things that you use for doing architecture and the logistics of how you build things and when. There are a number of other places where people sort of interface across those different systems, and I'm very, very excited by that. Another thing that I worked in standards, that's why I think those are interesting, but I missed last week's meeting because Unicode, the Unicode Consortium had an open office, and so I went to that, and I raised at that point if they have or have they considered a type character system for movement or gesture or action rather than just emoji of those actions. And I think I will join Unicode and try to pull on that thread in order to make sure that things like bodily gestures, not just the cute emoji that happen to exist about bodily gestures, can be encoded such that we can actually talk about the actions people should take within spatial systems. So that's something that I'm going to be doing. I'd love to be able to chat about it here.
So thank you, Brandel. You just nominated yourself for a presentation.
Yeah, yeah.
Please pick
And I think
any given Monday.
sure, yeah, and I think yeah, at this point, given where we are, I'd be comfortable giving. I think I talked about a talk I made a couple of years ago. I will polish it, of course, but what's a human user interface design as an exercise in applied cognitive science, and I pulled up the notes for that, and I think that it's worth giving that a twirl again to talk about the sort of the foundational um, rationale for why to get into space, this space, not that space. Yeah.
Thank you. And for Safari and Astral, the presentations we have sometimes are really in-depth and go on for quite a while. Other times they're quite short and it's just meant to really spark dialogue. So if you do want to present, it doesn't have to be a massive thing of the brilliance level that Brandel can do, because no one can do that. Well, I can. This does also hinge upon one other thing we've discussed a lot here is with Fabienne, who's not here today, we've been working on a basic spatial formats for knowledge, not space, which is complementary to what Brandel was talking about. If you have just a knowledge map in space, you need to know where something is, and that's basically it. You don't need to know the texture, the orientation. You could, but these are additional things. To keep that super simple, because I have a dream that in a normal traditional paper, you can have that as in a little column. This is the spatial XYZ, blah, 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 referring to an ID. And then what is the ID? The ID can be a list of simple things like the word potato, or it can refer to the references. So anybody can take yeah, Dini, we're finishing here in a minute, and thank you. Oh, she's gone. Yeah, we'll finish bang on today. So the underlying data structures, how we choose to represent it, as Ted Nelson would say, it's philosophy. It's not objective engineering. So Brandel, thank you for pushing in that direction. There are several others to do, for sure. In our last 8 minutes, anyone else have any notions of what they would like to see more of or differently next year? Well, okay, I'll keep talking. It interrupts me, okay? What I'm trying to do more of is theme discussions, not so many general open office hour things. I will pick them unless someone else does. It'll be around what we're trying to do. And what Peter said is really, really important. If we have a discussion on interfaces, we should assume all the data exists. And vice versa, if we're talking about data structures, we should assume we don't need an interface necessarily, although it may come into it briefly. I also want us to go in artistic directions all over the place. The stupider sounding, the more likely it is to be brilliant. So we should have a really safe space where we feel we can say nuts, and then maybe a few months later we get it. But similarly, we should be very careful not to worry about baby and bathwater. I don't want to lose any babies. That's partly why I showed the two-page spread in XR. Sometimes it's okay to have paper-based media in digital for some uses. Doesn't mean it should be everything. But we shouldn't feel that we have to be original for the sake of originality, right? And I hope Adam Wern, who has been busy for quite a while, will join us again. He has lots of crazy ideas. He was the one who talked about a text on a spline in 3D space, and he actually built it. He was the one who talked about gesture clash, but if you touch your fingers deliberately, clearly you won't have gesture clash. So we've been working on, hand menus. We need more perspective. So thank you, Safari and Astral, for joining us today. If you can think of other people who may not on the surface fit, maybe they would. Maybe they like texty stuff. And yes, we are having a meeting next Monday. for those who, like me, don't have a life at all. Let me just check on that calendar here on the 29th. Also, Safari and Astral, I will ask you, we have in our book, we have a sentence that people can fill in, which is when I put on a headset, I want to be able to see ... and do ... If you email me that, I will be extremely happy to put it in the book. It's a provocation to try to simplify, and so far, the range of responses has been wide, which is very exactly what we need.
Could you repeat that?
Yes.
I'm trying to follow it.
The sentence is, when I put on a headset, I want to be able to see ... You fill in that. And I want to be able to do the following with it.
Thank you.
I can write a bit on that.
Excellent. Brandel, going as rough as possible is critical for some decisions. Oh yeah, that's very much a Fabienne angle as well, isn't it? Thank you, Brandel, for writing that in the chat here as well. And also, very, very importantly, living in the age we live in, if you want the record to be different in terms of the summaries that we're doing, please look at the last two meetings, because those are examples of the new style. I am extremely happy to change it. And for any meeting, if someone has an additional thing they want to add to the record that wasn't spoken, super, super happy to paste it in. So there you go. What am I using for summary? I went through last week Gemini, which is great because it has huge context windows. I used Claude for the last year, and also ChatGPT, I think is 5.2 now. And I found ChatGPT to be, for this type of use, the best. So I went through last week and I built a prompt with ChatGPT back and forth, which was very useful. So I said, I want to be able to have highlights. And it asked me, what do you mean by highlights? And so on. So it was a back and forth to build the prompts. And as I said earlier, I've removed the per person because it's very often that we feel that isn't quite right. So now it's mostly a bit of an overview, the kind of topics, just enough for someone else to want to watch the video.
Whoa.
And I think that's it. I think we are running into a Christmas steam and out of this work steam.
Have a great week.
Safari, thank you for your kind message there. Astral and Safari, thank you for joining us today. And I look forward to seeing you as much or as little as you feel like. This is all very nice. Have a good Christmas week, everyone. Bye for now. Bye.
You too. Bye.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.